Hi and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. Okay, this is Mailbag, common feature of the channel. It's where I attempt to answer questions that you guys have left on the channel, or if I can't answer them, I have a good go at answering them, or I throw them out to the wider Tubing community to try and answer on behalf of somebody who's raised the question. Now, we'll get into this mailbag. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. This question comes from Migraine Gain, a commentator on the channel, or a common commentator on the channel, and this is in response to, is my SY85 banjaxed? If the disk drive fails video I did on June 2021. And Migraine writes, I've got one of the imported direct drive mods, same as yours. Yes, if you remember, I did, when I was restoring my SY85, I went for a direct drive disk drive rather than, well, let's be really clear. I went for a direct drive disk drive because the belt I got effectively failed. It didn't fix the problem. The drive was banjaxed, so I got a direct drive unit, and it has been working superbly ever since. Well, that was about a year ago now. Yeah, well over a year ago. I got my SY85. Anyway, so he's got the same as me, and on another one, I know Migraine has at least two SY85s, a CP USB type on the other one, large OLED and rotary version. So this is another thing people always say to me. Oh yeah, you can get the USB drive for your SY85, and you can. However, if you're going to buy a USB drive, for God's sake, don't buy the cheap one, because you'll be forever cursing yourself that you put the cheap one in, because it doesn't tell you the name of the folders and the samples that you're loading. So, something to the wise here: don't buy the cheap one just with the 2-digit LEDs. Go for the one with the OLED display that tells you what folder you're loading. Anyway. Migraine writes further, the USB is faster and more convenient, but it does glitch occasionally when it's loading lots of samples. I imagine it's overloading the SY85's buffer by initiating file transfers too quickly, and it needs some firmware tweaks. I've still not really got to work out how the Sector 101 SMB thing works, LOL. I'm going to do a video on that at some point. I managed to grab the updated EEPROM from Yamaha years ago, and they do pop up occasionally on eBay, but they're increasingly rare. Apologise. Yes, so someone else told me about the USB drive replacements while compatible haven't been correctly throttled. And this again is another issue with the USB drives, in that effectively they're modern technology, they're reading USB drives with modern technology, and effectively they're just squirting data into the SY85. Now the SY85 is a more modern machine than a lot of disk drive based machines were, but it still suffers from the same thing, that it's not particularly quick. It's not like a modern day computer. These things read data at a certain speed and are kind of been optimized for the speed that data will be read off a disk. And you know, I've said, if you've ever watched me doing videos on MIDI data dumps and sysec dumps, one of the things I make quite a big thing about is the baud rate. Now, we don't talk about baud rates very much anymore because we kind of don't do that stuff anymore. But the baud rate is effectively the speed at which the data is streamed from the device into the memory of a computer. And back in the day, baud rates are really important. And those of us, you know, who remember the early days of the internet, remember when you got your 14.4K modem. 14.4K was the baud rate, as in the speed at which data was being transferred to the service provider. Nowadays we think nothing about, I mean, I'm coming into the house I live in, you know, we have a 300 meg baud rate. Compared that with a 14.4K baud rate when the internet was kind of born. I can remember getting my first 14.4K modem and thinking it was fantastic. So one of the things you have to think about is the baud rate. And at the time I wrote the reply to Migraine Gain, I was still working on the whole SMB6 thing. I think I've got it sussed now, but at that point in time, and these questions came up quite a few months ago, I'm quite behind on Mailbag. So as I said, I'm going to probably do a video on that, probably over Christmas, I suspect, where we are in the year now. But one of the things I did say is, like me, I am actually in the market for the upgrade. And I know that Brian over at Sector 101, who kind of supports the SY85, he's actually looking for the latest firmware from an SY85. So if Migraine hasn't been in touch with Brian and you've got the latest firmware for the SY85, he would love to talk to you and arrange for you to meet up and get the chip out of your machine so that he can actually burn some EPROMs. And that way other people like me, because I don't have the latest firmware on my SY85 and I'd like to get the latest firmware on my SY85, so being able to sort of, someone like Brian being able to do that would be really, really, really fab. So if you're happy to share, I mean, I've spoken to Migraine, but you know, if you want to be put in contact with Brian at Sector 101 because you have the latest SY85 firmware, if you want to DM me privately, you know, you can DM me through Facebook or Instagram or through the channel. Don't put your contact details in the comment section, please. I always say this, I don't want to be responsible for your general details becoming available on the internet. So DM me privately and I'll sort of hook you up. Hope that answers that question. This next question comes from Sean Curran, and it's in response to but what do we know about the Behringer LM drum? And Sunday morning rant I did in June 2021. Now I haven't done Sunday morning rants for a while, for one of two reasons. Number one, I didn't really have an awful lot to say, and number two, I've kind of been I've not been feeling too well, so that's kind of the major reason. I'm not going to go into too much detail on why I'm not been feeling too well, but I haven't been feeling too well. So Sean writes, yes, it's similar to other sampled drum machines, but the most important feature is the circuit flow. For example, the S2400 is perfect for those classic EMU drumulator parts, along with hip-hop SP1200 uses. My impression is the LM drum will be perfect for those classic LM1 and Lindrum songs. Remember, the circuit flow of the Lindrum and the SP1200 are different, as long as the manufacturers hold faithful to the original circuit, filters, DACs, etc., we should have two different sounding modern re-imaged classic drum machines at a fraction, in brackets, a tenth of the price of the originals. I'm very excited to see what else Behringer comes out with. My little collection of their gear is steadily growing, so are others, which only confirm they are heading in the right direction. DMX and hopefully a Simmons SDS-5 I should say, are next on the list. I haven't seen, I've got to be honest, I mean, I've been watching the Behringer feed for the last probably 2 months, and it actually has been very quiet. And I've got to be honest and say, I think the reason why the Behringer feed has been very quiet is because they're having a lot of manufacturing problems in terms of getting chips and components. Anyway, Sean, I kind of agree. Both machines have individual workflows. It'd be interesting to see how Behringer, whether Behringer stay true to the LM1 and the Lindrum concepts, but we shall see.